No, folks, this is not a joke. I was sent this video by a fan on Discord. I watch it and... Come on, Wisecrack, you really don't understand the Grinch? Or Christmas? Okay, guys, I know it's past Christmas now, and I hope you all had a wonderful holiday, but... I'm sorry, I simply can't overlook this one. So, Wisecracked, tell us all about how you are breaking down the philosophy of Christmas and how the Grinch was right all along. I can't wait.
And if you need help unpacking the academic language at the end, he says, you can't take a piss without looking at an ad.
Go into any Olive Garden, P.F. Chang's Chinese Bistro, TGI Fridays, Fuddruckers. What do they have in the bathroom? Urinal cakes with my face on it.
Christmas movies. They're often really fun and also often terrible movies.
I beg to differ. Miracle on 34th Street, Home Alone, The Small One, Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown, multiple Christmas Carol adaptations, Elf, A Christmas Story, and various other movies that performed well objectively at the box office. Why do you think most often they're terrible movies?
But as 90-minute distillations of what Christmas represents in a cultural context, they can help us get a clearer idea of what Christmas represents, both in terms of its place as a religious holiday and a consumerist celebration. Shout out to everyone else who's going into credit card debt this season. I'm right there with you. And one classic holiday film in particular, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which is adapted from the Dr. Seuss book, seems to offer one of the most explicit explorations of whether or not Christmas is nothing but an excuse for us to go into credit card debt, buying stuff we don't need for people we don't like, or if it shows us how Christmas is something more.
Just something I want to point out real quick. You're using the Jim Carrey version of the adaptation, not the original. There are vast differences between the live-action Grinch and the original. The live-action painted the Whos and Whoville in a disgusting light, which was never the intention of Dr. Seuss, and Seuss's own family came out in condemnation of how this movie represented the Whos, making them all consumerist, greedy, and cruel, when in reality the entire point was that they were filled with the Christmas spirit from the start, and that even without their presence, they were still full of joy. This movie was an absolute travesty on the original message of the Grinch. So you using this as some kind of proof positive that teaches us the true meaning of Christmas is laughable when this movie can't even teach us the meaning of Seuss's original work. So we're already starting off bad. But then again, if you'd use the original, it probably wouldn't help your narrative, I guess.
Okay, so let's find out in this Philosopher Reacts to How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Philosopher Reacts! You think yourself a philosopher, do you? Friend, you are one of the most dishonest and pitiful philosophers that I've ever studied. In every video I've replied to that you've made, you pick an argument, quote specific researchers and philosophers to support your points, and then ignore any contradictory philosophies, facts, or arguments that go against your narrative. You accuse the Straw Hat Pirates from One Piece of being nothing more than a nomadic warrior machine intent on destroying the systems of government within their world, and claim that we could use their own flexibility to teach ourselves that we don't need to have any ideological consistency in our own actions and motives. So in other words, change our entire ideological outlook to suit our protests. You argued in another video that war was a relatively recent creation caused by the forming of nations, and completely discounted all philosophical, historical, and sociological research that points out conflict and war being inherent throughout human history. You nitpick Jordan Peterson's critique of the Communist Manifesto by arguing that he shouldn't read the literal Communist Manifesto to learn about communism because, one, it was co-written by Frederick Engels, as if that detracts from Marx being an author himself, and saying, two, that Marx has written other books as well. You are a philosopher in the same sense that Hitler was a humanitarian. Oh, sure, Hitler was guilty of mass genocide, horrible atrocities, and being behind one of the largest war efforts in all of history, but he did provide mandatory breaks in the standard workday for German citizens. Isn't that enough to call him humanitarian? It must be if you have the gall to call yourself a philosopher.
But first, a quick reminder, if you need something to celebrate this holiday season, celebrate Wisecrack Live. It's our stream. It happens every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific right here on the channel. It'd mean a lot to me if you would come and hang out. We are neither a religious or consumerist organization of individuals. We just celebrate the collapse of culture via content and have fun doing it. So check it out, Wisecrack Live, Thursdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, right here. I mean, not literally right here. I do it at my house, but on this channel, just not in this room. You know what I'm saying, okay? Before we get into the movie, I want to take a second and talk about the weird tension between consumerism and religion that we see in both Christmas itself and in Christmas movies, and ask whether or not Christmas itself has taken on some sort of religious function. And by that I mean not that Christmas is religious in its relationship to Christianity, but that we treat Christmas like its own sort of separate religious thing. As scholar Christopher Deasy says in his book, Christmas as Religion, it may be that the secular, commercialized marketplace values we associate with Christmas are themselves performing a religious function because they are in harmony with the sacred order and process of the economy. Basically, where we used to treat Christmas like a religious holiday celebrating the birth of little baby Jesus, now it's a time where we kind of celebrate the practice of consumerism. And a lot of classic Christmas films seem to bear this out, at least to some extent, because they're rarely about traditional religious practice, and more often than not are movies about our relationships to money, consumer goods, or both. And it's interesting how many classic Christmas movies involve someone not having money or a thing, and at the end of the movie, they get money or a thing, usually given to them by someone else. So I guess that's the reason for the season. If you know a Christmas movie that doesn't involve someone primarily stressed about getting money or an object, please let us know in the comments. I would like to watch that.
How about A Christmas Carol? You know, the story by Charles Dickens, in which a greedy moneylender who cared nothing for others or for his own employees and didn't mind taking from others learns the value of the season, partaking in his fellow man, and in the end gives generously unto others, not seeking anything new for himself. Watch any of those adaptations? There are quite a few of them. Or what about Elf? A movie in which Buddy the Elf just wants to understand his father and build a relationship with him. He's not after money or a present or a rare item or a cool gift. He just wants to know his own father, and in the end rekindles that long sought after relationship while finding he can exist in the human and adult world. I'm sorry, do you even Christmas movie? But the funny thing is, I find your definition of most Christmas movies kind of funny. You say they all celebrate commercialism because a character wants something, struggles to get that something, but in the end gets it. Isn't that most stories? Most stories involve a character wanting something, going on a journey or quest to get it, and then achieving it. I mean, I admit that many Christmas movies do over-sensationalize consumerism and commercialism, but you are aware that in most of those cases, it's seen as a negative thing, right? The lesson is that this worshipping of consumerism is actually a bad thing. You do know that that's what they're doing, right? They're not saying that's what Christmas is about. They're saying that's what Christmas is not about, and that's the goal of the main characters, to discover that or show that. You are aware of this.
But does The Grinch offer us some type of non-religious account of Christmas that includes a critique of consumerism? Or is it just a movie that ultimately tells us that our consumer desires are a-okay as long as we're aware of them? Well, let's find out by watching a movie where Jim Carrey was seemingly told to just do what you did in The Mask, except different, because that seems to be what happens. And his face is green in both of them. I'm going to assume at this point, one of our wonderful editors can play a clip from The Grinch.
Oh.
And a clip from The Mask.
Spoken!
Which shows that Jim Carrey does a similar thing. Okay, let's start at the beginning of the film, where we get a sense of what Whoville is like around Christmas.
And Thanpa for your cousin Leon. So we just need...
I need a Xanax just looking at this store.
Cindy Lou. Oh,
It makes me appreciate online shopping,
excuse me. Cindy Lou, honey?
even if it's kind of exploitative.
Dad,
Yeah?
doesn't this seem like a bit much?
Cindy Lou, the one person with some goddamn sense in this town.
Yes, because that's the point. She's the one who recognizes the problem with the society. But you'll notice that in the original story, all of the Whos were aware of the problem with consumerism and commercialization. And am I really about to watch this guy pretend to critique this movie from a philosopher's perspective when he himself doesn't understand Christmas?
Feel it?
Not afraid to ask the big question. They're just throwing money. It's like we're at a strip club. I hope that wasn't disrespectful, that I said it's like a strip club.
For the next 5 minutes only, 99% off.
What sort of sale is 99% off? I think if you have a sale at 99% off, it either means you're willfully losing money or that you mark up your products so much normally that you can take 99% off and still make profit. Either way, that's crazy. Okay, so watching this, it's pretty clear that the reason for the season for the Who's is consumption and commerce, right? They're the driving engines of Christmas, but we can ask, why are they like this? And of course, why are we like this? Now, according to Professor Bruce P. Rittenhouse, the reason Americans remain attached to a consumeristic form of life is because it performs the religious function of providing them with an answer to the existential problem of meaning. And of course, this means that it's not that we or the Who's are just soulless, capitalist, consumerist monsters that need to consume at all cost, but we're creatures that are hungry for some type of existential meaning, some purpose, something that orients us in reality. And consumerism gives us that meaning on a shiny platter, and especially so around the holidays. Now, sociologist Francois Gautier says something similar and writes that it is fascinating that scholars of religion have all but ignored the obvious, the incredible rise of economics as a dominant and structuring social force in the beginning of the 1980s. And we have all noticed that consumption impregnates social life in such a way that it is impossible to relieve oneself in public facilities without having to stare at publicity. And if you need help unpacking the academic language at the end, he says, you can't take a piss without looking at an ad.
Go into any Olive Garden, P.F. Chang's Chinese Bistro, TGI Fridays, Fuddruckers. What do they have in the bathroom? Urinal cakes with my face on it.
But the point again is that economics and consumption serve a religious function because they give us meaning and purpose. And this is especially heightened during the holidays. And we see the Who's doing that.
Okay, yeah, I will concede that point. It's true that many people find personal value in what they can spend money on. It's the same reason we spend money on nice cars, nice TVs, nicer appliances. The nicer our amenities, the more well off we feel. We feel a sense of pride in the fact that we can have enough disposable income to afford these things. That much is true, but none of those two people you just quoted have mentioned Christmas. You are applying their theories to Christmas and to the Who's, which is fair, but the purpose of your video is to explain the philosophy of Christmas and why the Grinch was right. And if you believe that the philosophy of Christmas as a holiday is that it's all about consumerism, you're a fool. But I will allow you to make your case. Let's see where you go with this.
And there's some philosophers who think this isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. One other thing we note from early on in the film is that we don't really see any references to religion. We don't really see that throughout the film as such. The Who's do not know about Jesus Christ and his birth, I guess. And Kevin Concannon, who's a professor and wrote an essay about the book, said that the absence of Christianity from the book's Christmas opens up a different set of thematics that the book dramatizes below the surface, notably resentment, desire, violence, consumerism, and faith itself. We'll get back to that later, but it is interesting when we take religion out, it leaves space for a lot of other fun stuff.
An interesting point. Yep, maybe that's because we should remember the reason for the season, right? Please tell me you're actually making the argument we should keep Christ central in Christmas. I will forgive everything else in the video if you do that. Spoiler warning, I don't think he's going to do that.
We're going to cut ahead now to the Grinch in Whoville after Cindy Lou brings him there. Maybe it's a mistake that she brought him there. Let's find out.
Think for the love of my life.
Okay, and the mayor's getting up to some stuff here.
Please become.
Didn't you all think they were already married? We literally saw them as kids. He's waited this long? It's like got off the pot, man. It's a hell of a ring.
If you agree to be my wife,
but the ring's not enough.
with a lifetime supply of happiness, you'll also receive this.
You ever heard of such a thing?
It's a new car.
He has a microphone. The car is already spinning. His man is just rubbing the car to try to entice her.
What do you say, Martha?
Oh boy. I didn't offer anything when I proposed. Maybe that's why she still hasn't told me the answer and I haven't seen her in 2 years. Just kidding. Okay, so while the mayor of Whoville clearly sucks, it's also the case that this consumer-based sense of meaning seeps into every area of culture, including things like marriage. Now, according to Rittenhouse, abandoning consumerism means abandoning what gives a person assurance that his or her life matters. This is only possible if a person who lives in a consumeristic culture can nevertheless secure his or her significance in a different source of meaning. Which basically means if consumerism is the dominant religion of Whoville, well, of course, that's how the mayor would propose. Of course, he would tie the marriage proposal to a huge sign of consumeristic desire and his ability to consume and acquire stuff. But surely no one in America or our world now would ever do something like that.
I think we're all aware that filthy rich people will do whatever they want with their money. But let's talk about the average person. How many people do you know that make marriage proposals by offering a new car or some kind of material item outside of a ring? How many people actually say, if you marry me today, you'll also get a new car and a new yacht and a new bunch of dogs? Do you see that regularly from the modern or average person? You picked a single example of a rich guy being an asshole. So can you do that with any middle class household or impoverished household? Again, you keep pointing all this out, but dude, you are aware that this is portrayed as a bad thing, right? This is not saying that this is what Christmas is about. The whole point of this terrible movie is pointing out that the Whoville ideology and outlook is bad and not what Christmas is actually about, right? You do know that, right? You're acting like this outlook is how Christmas is. You're acting like this is just the way Christmas is. But that's not what it is. That's the point. The Whos have lost sight of what Christmas is. That's the point of this movie. You are aware of this.
Okay, so the Grinch now goes full Joker and calls the society out. It's pretty fun. Although that's not fun. The sound that makes is really horrifying. It's like worse than nails on a chalkboard.
Of course they are.
He has bad teeth,
That's
though.
what it's all about, isn't it? That's what it's
like he has
all
two sets of teeth.
been about. Here.
I think he ever wonders, like, why do I look different from everyone else? I'm fundamentally different. Is there a culture where people that look like him exist, and if he was there, he could just be a part of them and not forced into all this?
Your garbage! I could hang myself with all the bad Christmas neckties I found at the dump. And the avarice. The avarice never ends!
Oh, he's so
I want
mad.
golf clubs. I want diamonds. I want a pony so I can ride it twice, get bored, and sell
That
it
is
to make
true that
glue.
when you return your pony, they
I don't
turn
wanna
it to
make
glue.
waves.
But this whole Christmas
That's why I always use tape
season
instead,
is
because tape is made
stupid.
from whale bones. I just hate
There is,
whales.
however,
So hubristic.
one
I'm a whale. I'm bigger than you. I live in the ocean, you know?
Christmas tradition
It's like, off.
I find quite
This is really racy. I remember watching this as a kid, and you're like, oh no, he's gonna touch your boobies. But no, he just snatches the mistletoe and does a very good 5th grade joke. Tells them to kiss his ass, and they faint. They faint, friends. Imagine being so fragile, you know? So fragile that someone putting mistletoe over their butthole while clothed would make you faint.
I love how you just keep talking throughout this entire scene as if you feel your input is more important than the scene we're watching. It might help your audience if we could hear what the Grinch is saying to better understand his critiques and his arguments, but ignoring that. You're so focused on your own critique of the mistletoe butt thing that you missed the part where he buzzed a dude's head. Imagine being so fragile that you faint at someone waving mistletoe at their ass and telling you to kiss it. You know, maybe a part of that is that the Grinch is being crude, rude, and socially unacceptable. Maybe it's that he's being hostile. Maybe it's that he's grabbing stuff from others, vandalizing cars, harassing a town's whole way of life, and being generally unhinged. Oh, and he also buzzes a dude's hair in front of everyone. He's clearly dangerous, mentally unwell, a psychopath, and you're judging the Whos for fainting at his sudden, erratic behavior? Oh, but I suppose that makes sense. His actions and behavior are totally acceptable since they're openly anti-consumerist, right? And after all, our ideologies should be able to shift wherever and to whatever we want, so long as we continue to fight the man. That's what you said in your One Piece video. Oh, man, let's keep going.
But this is important because we have the Grinch just pointing out the hypocrisy of the whole situation, or if not the hypocrisy, basically saying underneath all of your cultural practices that you project meaning onto is just pure consumption. And he even points out that he has to deal with their trash, right? He sees the way in which all that consumption just leads to waste. And if there was more time, we could probably get into the environmental factors there, but we're not going to. But from the same essay I referenced before by Concanon, he says, at the service of the text, the Grinch is an anti-capitalist. He steals to stop the cycle of consumption upon which he thinks Christmas is based. He then goes on to quote Slavoj Žižek as saying that Žižek has noted that such anti-capitalism is a feature that lives within capitalist logic itself and paradoxically serves to reinforce the system. And the idea there is that a capitalist system can contain anti-capitalism within it as a necessary part of that system. And then he goes on to say, this is true of Dr. Seuss's classic take on environmentalism in the Lorax. We'll cover that one on Earth Day or something. But for the time being, we see that the Grinch operates in some type of anti-capitalist position within the Whoville society. However, the question remains, can that anti-capitalism exist within the system, or does the Grinch do something that shatters that system itself? Stick around to find out.
Okay, so I would argue, if I had to make this argument, that the Grinch is not anti-capitalist, rather just anti-consumerist. And even then, I'd argue that in the original story, he wasn't even that. But let's just go with this movie for now. Capitalism gives people private ownership and is based on the generation of profit from products. So in other words, it's a form of making money from the selling of products. Whereas consumerism is based on the product consumption by the consumer and aims to govern the market, which will hold the consumer's interest. In other words, the market is governed by the amount of consumption. Now, so that means that capitalism has to do with an economic principle, whereas consumerism is a market tactic. Now, granted, capitalism often uses consumerism tactics, but they are not inherently the same thing. Now, what does the Grinch hate? In this movie, what does he hate? Does he hate the capitalists who profit from the selling of their product? Or does he hate the overwhelming expenditure of money, resources, and time to buy overly extravagant things that they don't necessarily need? Sounds to me he has less issue with the capitalist system as he does with the consumerist ideology of the Who's. However, if you watch the backstory of this same movie, if you see the Grinch's flashback, in this movie it's revealed the Grinch actually doesn't hate Christmas for its consumerist practices, but because when he was a kid he was bullied for being green on Christmas and hates Christmas as a result. Thus, he projects his hatred of the bullying onto the holiday in which it took place. You know, a psychologist would call this a projection of hate, but I suppose you just didn't want to explore that aspect. Just like you didn't want to explore the original story, where the Grinch simply says he hates the Who's because their noisy music annoys him, he hates their feasting, and the thing he hates most of all, that they sing Christmas songs with each other.
They'll sing and they'll sing and they'll sing, 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 sing.
In the original, the Grinch doesn't hate the consumerism. He is hateful of the joy they have and all of their happiness. He hates that they're happy and he's not. He is the definition of a grump. He is the Grouch's best friend, if they could have friends. That's why he thinks if he takes all the stuff, he can take away their happiness. See why picking this movie in particular was a very poor choice? And additionally, the woman being proposed to in that scene was the Grinch's crush. So that might have pushed him over the edge. I watched the movie too.
Okay, so now the Grinch is doing his plan, which we call the old reverse Santa, where he sucks the presents via tubes outside of the chimneys, and he encounters our good friend Cindy Lou in the middle of the night, who has a really cool late night hairstyle. But Cindy Lou has a question for Santa, who's actually the Grinch.
Santa, what's Christmas really about?
Vengeance!
Presents, I suppose.
I was afraid of that.
But Cindy Lou seems so smart, but then she doesn't recognize the Grinch. Come on, Cindy Lou. Maybe she wears glasses normally, or she has contacts, and she takes them out at night. So then, yeah, maybe she takes her contacts out at night, and then she got up to get a snack, and her contacts were still out, and that's why she didn't recognize the Grinch in a Santa outfit.
Yeah, you know, we see this in the writing world as what's called an inconsistency in writing, or a plot hole. Cindy has met the Grinch before earlier in the movie and knows what he looks like and who he is. So her not knowing who he is here makes no sense. You're sitting here trying desperately to defend it by arguing maybe she has contacts, when you could just point out this is a very stupid scene. I would have just pointed out this is a very stupid scene.
But yeah, I think there's something interesting that happens here in that Cindy Lou is sort of the skeptic or the atheist of Whoville society. She's like the gadfly of Whoville because she's desperately looking for a reason to believe. She seems to want to believe or have something to believe in, but every time she gets close, it's revealed to her that the faith of her people just boils down to consumer participation. She's searching for something more. It gets back to that question of, looking for existential meaning in life. Well, she wants that, and she's not really getting satisfying answers there. So I don't know, kids. If you're not satisfied with the answers that your culture or parents or religion give you, just keep asking questions and wear your hair in a real straight up thing like Cindy Lou, because it seems to work out for her.
Okay. You keep equating the holiday of Christmas with being a religion itself. Not that it's connected to Christianity, but that it is itself is a religion, when that's not what it is. Perhaps some people treat consumerism as a religion, but Cindy did not ask, what is consumerism about? Or why do we buy presents? Or why is Whoville like this? No, she asked, what is Christmas really about? Implying that she knows there's more to Christmas than this. Thus, implying this society's understanding of Christmas is flawed, meaning that they have a poor understanding of Christmas. You, though, wisecracked buddy, are the one expositing that this outlook that Whoville has is the correct one. You keep saying that this consumerist outlook that the Whos have is what Christmas is, and that the Grinch's whole purpose is to try to destroy that. You'll notice that the Grinch himself has to pause and make up an answer. He doesn't know. He and Cindy both don't understand Christmas because they know it's not just consumerism. Well, she knows it, the Grinch doesn't. Right now, Cindy Lou Who is searching for the meaning of Christmas. She wants to know what Christmas is really about, and she knows it's not just consumerism. The Grinch, though, thinks it is just consumerism, and he's trying to destroy it. Kind of like you are.
Okay, so here we have the aftermath of the Grinch's reverse Santa, which is not a sex move. The reverse Santa is not. But if it was, let us know in the comments what a reverse Santa would be in language that won't get your comment banned.
I'd like to remind you that this is someone who proclaims himself to be a philosopher, everyone. Yes, we are listening to a philosopher right now. Oh my gosh. This is cringe. This is incredibly cringe.
Did anyone listen to me? I did. No. You choose to listen
This mayor sucks.
to a little not to be taken seriously girl who hasn't even grown into her nose yet.
The first time in the film they acknowledge why Cindy
I hope
Lou
you're very
has
proud
a normal human
of
nose.
what you've done.
The finger wag. Have you ever wagged a
She
finger
isn't.
like that
I
at my
am.
child? Oh, here we go. Good father
I'm
behavior.
glad he took our presents.
This could be a thing though where dad says this when everyone else is watching, and then maybe at home he's just like, I worked too hard for this. I work all year, and now the presents are gone. Give me a drink. Or maybe he's a good guy. Who knows?
That the Grinch virtually wrecked, no, not wrecked, pulverized Christmas. Is that what I'm hearing from you, Lou?
You can't hurt Christmas, Mr. Mayor, because it isn't about the gifts or the contests or the fancy lights.
So note that
That's what Cindy's been trying
he tells
to
us
tell
what Christmas
everyone.
isn't,
And me.
but not really what Christmas
Trying to
is.
tell me.
What is wrong with you?
It's like I can
This is a
invite you
child.
over for dinner, and you say, "What are you making?" And
Oh,
I say,
child.
"It's not."
And she
Poop.
happens to be right, by the way.
And you're psyched that I'm not going to feed you feces, but also there's a lot of other things it could be. Maybe I give you a positive description, like it's chicken parm.
Because, as quoted from Dr. Seuss, maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. I urge you to watch A Christmas Carol, wherein they also explore what Christmas is without giving it a strict definition. But if you keep watching the scene, the father later says, I don't need anything more for Christmas than my family. That's a part of it. Fellowship, happiness, brotherhood, giving and sharing, love, peace and goodwill. They demonstrate this without having to say it, as did the original book. The difference here is that in this movie, the Whos had to learn that apparently, even though in the original they always knew that.
Which is also not poop.
Well, I don't need anything more for Christmas than this right here. my family.
So Christmas is about the family, I think.
Even when we get to that part that I just mentioned, you still won't acknowledge the obvious conclusion being drawn. You're still trying to play the skeptic. You're trying to ignore the obvious. You're going, well, I mean, maybe it's about family. I don't know. They need to spell it out for me. I'm too dense to see the writing on this wall.
Merry Christmas, everybody!
Everyone else seems to join in, and then here we go, guys. Get ready for it. It's about to get hot.
Hunk of burning who?
She just goes for it. And watch the sons right here. Watch the son. He's gonna look like he looks like he's about to throw up. That's really disrespectful. It's really disrespectful. Let your parents make love.
That's really disrespectful. That's this coming from the guy who earlier said.
Imagine being so fragile, you know, so fragile that someone putting mistletoe over their butthole while clothed would make you faint.
So that, how fragile do you have to be to faint at that? But then turns around, hey, not wanting your parents to kiss in public, that's disrespectful. Dude, I know you don't like consistency, but would you mind giving it a shot?
Of this Christmas season, everyone, let your parents make love, you know? You hear a little noise coming from the bedroom. You see mommy kissing Santa Claus. Look the other way. Leave it alone. Let it happen. Yeah, so it seems like the Grinch's reverse Santa is a net positive for the whole of society, although we only get this negative understanding of what Christmas isn't, not really what Christmas is. But there's a quote from the DC book that I think is helpful here, where he says, "There is also the paradox that despite being bound up with the world of commerce and capitalism, Christmas is also synonymous with the home, handmade gifts, and spontaneous giving, the opposite of modern commercial activity." And that does make me think as well of the Zizek thing we talked about before, where two paradoxical elements can coexist in that way. And I think that's what he's saying right here. A lot of Christmas films and Christmas culture in general contain this heavy emphasis on consumerism, while also saying what really matters is the home, handmade gifts, spontaneous giving, the family, all that sort of stuff.
Here, Mr. Philosopher, I think I can help you out. Because Christmas is about fellowship, giving, and sharing in love and goodwill. Just as Jesus Christ was the ultimate gift to the world, so too should we give unto others and share in joy as we celebrate that most important gift of all. Tell me this. You keep talking about consumerism, but why do we buy those gifts? You see, why do we buy gifts from the store on Christmas? Are they for us personally? Or are they to give to others? Oh yeah, sure, kids make Christmas lists, and we of course ask for things on Christmas, but do we buy them for ourselves? Or do we buy them for others? See, some of us do have the ability to make things. You know what most of my Christmas gifts were? I got a picture from Jay and Hannah that they both drew, and I wrote a story for my brother and another one for my parents because I didn't have a lot of money to spend to buy them gifts. But they loved the stories I wrote, and I loved all of the pictures I got. But even if they bought me things, even if Jay, Hannah, and all of them had bought me things, or I'd bought them things, it would have meant the same, because it's not about the items. It's about the giving, the fellowship, the meaning, taking the time and consideration to give a little of yourself so someone else can be happy. If all you do is buy things for your own gain, just for the sake of buying them, then of course you won't find fulfillment or happiness. If you have nothing but only yourself to give, then giving a little of yourself has so much meaning. If you have time, give your time. If you have the power to draw pictures, then a picture that you drew for someone could be worth more than any purchased item. And if you have the money to purchase an item or a gift, then the fact you spent that money to get it means all that much more. It is not so much about the item as it is about the meaning of giving it to another person. It's not about the product or the purchasing. It's about the giving, the receiving. I don't see how you don't grasp this.
Okay, so the Grinch did his reverse Santa, but then the Who's, because of Cindy Lou's dad, they're still having a nice Christmas. He hears them singing. What does it all mean?
Then the Grinch?
I bet a rhyme could help us figure it out.
He hadn't before.
Maybe Christmas.
He thought.
Doesn't.
They leave it so vague, though. Like, tell us what Christmas is.
I find it hilarious that you, as a philosopher, are complaining about things being vague. should you not be able to draw a conclusion based on the evidence shown, or maybe propose a possibility? Could you not look at all this and propose a conclusion? You're demanding the story tell you, but you don't have the imagination or ability to reach a conclusion?
Hung out for an hour and a half.
Maybe Christmas.
And then this is what you're going to tell me. You're going to say Christmas is... What is it? What is it? What is it?
Means a little bit more.
It's just more. Christmas is more. What is it? Oh, it's not consumerism. It's not gifts. It's more.
Yes, and any child who has read that book in elementary school could have easily grasped that meaning. You, meanwhile, are so desperate to apply your anti-consumerist narrative that you'll feign ignorance and again display yourself as an incompetent.
Okay, so the Grinch ends up positively affected by the ability of the Whos to detach their holiday celebration from consumption. But according to Concanon, because Christmas is revealed to be more than the acquisition of material goods, it is surprising that the Grinch then turns his sleigh around, returns the items he stole, and then joins in with the usual Who Christmas celebrations. And in those clips, you're seeing that the Grinch, after having his change of heart, not a heart attack, goes down with his sleigh, gives them presents, and they do all the normal Christmas stuff, just as they always have. And here's more of the same quote from Concanon. He says, when he hears the Who's singing, the Grinch's beliefs about Christmas change. He now knows that Christmas is not about presents and feast, and it is precisely this knowing that allows him to enter Whoville as a fellow consumer. His knowledge has allowed him to distance himself from consumption, just as the Who's seemingly always have done. As long as you know that Christmas is more than presents, then you can buy all the presents you want. And it seems that that's where the film lands.
That's what you took from the ending. Oh, sweet mercy. Really? Okay, the Grinch realized that taking their gifts didn't take away Christmas. That Christmas was in the giving, the fellowship, the sharing, and the community. It wasn't just about buying gifts or items or celebrating commercialism. By realizing this, he wanted to make up for his wrongs, return all he'd taken, give back the things he stole because he realized he was in the wrong. You have demonstrated here that you and the author of this article do not comprehend the meaning of the Grinch. You assume the Grinch was trying to remove the commercialization from the Whos and remove their goods so as to deprive them of their Christmas. But upon realizing that that's not what Christmas is about, he learns that it's fine to be consumeristic just within reason. You really think that's the message? That wasn't the message. The Grinch equated the goods with Christmas because he equated Christmas with joy and happiness. And what makes them joyous and happiest but presents? To him, Christmas must be the presents, because what else could make them happy? When he learned that taking the presents away didn't take away Christmas, he understood that taking them meant nothing. And he learned, just like Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol, that he could return them. By giving back, he could make them happy, make himself happy, and thereby further understand what it is that Christmas is. Scrooge learned about Christmas by witnessing the lives of people in his past, present, and future. And the Grinch learned about Christmas by seeing what happens when people with Christmas spirit go without the products of Christmas. In both cases, the characters had their eyes opened, and in both cases, they decided to share what they had, give back what they had taken, and stop depriving others of their happiness for personal satisfaction. Both you and the article writer are political chumps and stupid.
That the acknowledgement of the logic of consumer Christmas in Whoville allows you to then willfully participate in the very thing, the logic of which you don't like. If this movie was going to be some type of anti-consumerist screed where the Grinch really did disrupt Whoville's Christmas, what should he have done? Burn the presents? Thrown them in the trash? I don't know. So let us know in the comments how you think this movie should have ended. What could the Grinch have done to really see it all through?
And there it is. You admitted it. You wanted this movie to carry an anti-capitalist message. You wanted it so badly, you're now saying, I feel like this movie should have had a different ending. How do you think this movie should have ended to be anti-capitalist and anti-consumerist? You want this movie to end differently because you want it to have a message it was never trying to propose. You're no philosopher, you're a beta cuck and a communist who demands that all media, all movies, and all creations must adhere to your worldview, must adhere to this belief system that you have, and if they don't, you will twist everything you can to make it.
Okay, so thank you for hanging out for that. It was fun for me. I hope it was a little bit fun for you. I want to end with a quote from DC again, whose book you should check out if you're interested in this stuff. He says, "It is for this reason that Christmas is such a conundrum. It may be a festival of unalloyed and undisciplined materialism where 20% of all retail goods sold in the United States are Christmas purchases, in which nearly 60% of Americans incurred credit card debt at Christmas 2004, with some 14% still paying off debts from the previous year when Christmas 2005 came around, but such a narrative is not always the one we choose to hear. Rather, Christmas is a time associated with a focus on the children, humanitarianism toward the underprivileged and vulnerable, and a feeling of nostalgia for good times past." So we hope whatever you're doing this holiday season, whether it's Christmas or something else, make it a good thing. We're going to try our best to do that as well. And thank you so much for your support all year. Wanted to let you know.
You want to know the funniest thing about all of this? Your video was titled, "The Philosophy of Christmas, the Grinch was right." Was he? The Grinch believed that presents and consumerism was what made people happy. It's what Christmas was. And yet you didn't prove that. You didn't prove that was right. The Grinch was wrong. And he realized he was wrong. He brought back everything he stole. He was the villain, and he realized that, which is why he made up for it. So you actually don't even get this story. You don't just not understand the Grinch, you don't understand Christmas. It is true that Christmas is often over-commercialized, and that is a problem, but we've known about this since the 50s. And that's why so many Christmas movies today try to push an anti-commercialism narrative to help remind us of the true meaning of the season. Some will push a more religious side with references to Jesus, and others will avoid that but still discuss the meaning of fellowship, giving joy, giving happiness, sharing amongst one another, being around your family and friends. And at the end of the day, this is what most people know Christmas is about. Many will spend tons of money for others to buy Christmas goods, presents, or decorations because they want to celebrate the season and give to others they love. This is not just an example of buying for the sake of buying. Many people have pointed out that this version of the Grinch missed the point of the original, and though Jim Carrey himself is entertaining, the who's and how they are portrayed takes away from the magic of the original. If you want to hear a movie talk about the real meaning of Christmas, I would recommend Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown, wherein Linus literally tells the meaning of Christmas by quoting the Bible story. Or you could watch The Gift of the Magi, in which two lovers sell important things of theirs to buy a gift for the other, only to learn that the other got rid of the thing they prized so much in order to get that gift. There's a great version of that with Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. It's called Mickey and Minnie's Gift of the Magi. I think it's a part of Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas. I would definitely recommend checking that. It's short, but it's very good. We see the real meaning of the season displayed in that. It's not about what we buy for ourselves, but what we give to each other and what we sometimes give up so that others may be happy. You are so obsessed with politics, communism, anti-capitalism, and anti-consumerism, and so high on yourself, that you actually can't understand a holiday that even children have understood for years. I'm not saying that there aren't people in this world who miss the point of Christmas and do see it as just commercial spending. They exist out there. Scrooges and Grinches exist out there. They always have, probably always will. But you sitting here trying to tell me how the Grinch was right shows me that the biggest Grinch of all is currently making videos on Wisecrack. You should be ashamed of yourself. Thank you guys for watching this video. I know that it's after Christmas and I probably could have waited until next year to do it, but I don't know, this one kind of spoke to me. I felt the need to address this. I hope you enjoyed the video. You can share your thoughts down in the comments below. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And I hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas and a wonderful holiday season. And as always, I will see you in my next video. Take care.